My interest in learning everything I could about different medical setups in relation to traditional African communities was spurred by a friend's observation and experience as a child. While visiting this friend, his parents started speaking of an old lady herbalist who had been their neighbor. Apparently, the old lady started treating an epileptic boy in the village after many modern doctors in the city had failed to treat him successfully. What were the results? Well, less than 2 months later, the frequency of the young boy's seizures had decreased gradually until they eventually disappeared completely in about an year. Unfortunately, the old lady passed away a few years later and no one knew the herbs she had used. And as the African proverb says, the nation lost one more library at the death of this herbalist whose knowledge on the use and identification of medicinal plants hadn't been recorded. Anyway, this story prompted an interest and desire to learn how traditional African communities dealt with pandemics like COVID-19, pandemics that dramatically altered human societies. With that in mind, if you like the content, do not forget to smash the like button and leave a comment below. This will help the channel grow and allow me to make more videos in the future. And if you love content on pre-colonial Kenyan societies delivered in story format, do not forget to hit the subscribe button as well. Let's jump right into it. The first tribe we'll look at is the Abaluya community in Western Kenya. In their traditional medical setup, there were 4 different types of healers. The first one was the herbalist, known as Mpesa in the native tribe. And as their title suggests, these were responsible for providing drugs that treated ordinary diseases of serious nature and were the ones tasked with finding solutions for pandemics like smallpox and measles. To contain an illness, the Mpesa started by evaluating whether the disease afflicting the community was contagious or not. If it was, then all those suffering from it will usually be isolated from the rest of the community right away. The sharing of communal facilities with them was restricted as much as possible as well. That said, if the disease was contagious but wasn't too serious in nature, then individuals suffering from the illness wouldn't be isolated to a much higher degree. A great example is those suffering from common colds. In worst case scenarios, these individuals simply were not allowed to share drinking pots with anyone during beer parties. To heal gonorrhea that had wreaked havoc in their lands at some point in history, Abaluya ancestors had not 1 but 2 tree roots whose efficiency has already been proven by modern science. These were the Sinani and Lunani trees, popularly known as flame thorns in English, as well as the Kumufutu tree, popularly known as black pearl in English. The second type of healer was called Omulakusi, and these experts were responsible for divinations whenever a misfortune befell the community or a family. The Omulakusi was also responsible for cleansing people who were considered to be in states of ritual impurity. And this category of individuals included warriors who had killed their first enemy in battle, ladies who had just given birth, especially to twins, people who had been cursed by their elder relatives, and much more. While touching on the topic of Omulakusi, there is another interesting phenomenon that I ought to mention. The Abaluya also believed that some illnesses and misfortunes could be caused by ancestral spirits, and the tribe distinguished between 2 different types of ancestral spirits, the malevolent and the benevolent. Malevolent spirits were referred to as Bisieno, while the benevolent ones were referred to as Bakuka. As their name suggests, the Bisieno are believed to be the spirits of people who, when alive, were sorcerers, witches, or just downright evil. Furthermore, these spirits had one exclusive aim: to send death, sickness, and misfortunes to their living relatives. They were also believed to be responsible for misfortunes such as miscarriage, impotence, infertility in women, as well as illnesses like epilepsy and madness. With that in mind, whenever an evil spirit became persistently troublesome, the communities of Omulakusi at the time would ritually dig up the bones of the spirit and burn them. According to the tribe, this will usually ward off or destroy the evil spirits permanently. The benevolent spirits, on the other hand, were believed to act as intercessors between the living and the one true God called Nyasaye in the native language. Because of this belief, the living believed that they had to lead a righteous life and maintain a vertical relationship with their creator so they could get promoted to the position of intercessors after their death. The third type of healer in the 𝗣𝗟𝗣𝗣𝗢's traditional medical setup was 𝗣𝗟𝗣𝗣𝗣𝗣𝗣𝗠, the bone setter. When a person broke his or her limbs, he or she went for treatment to an 𝗣𝗟𝗣𝗣𝗣𝗍, who would first align the bones and then massage the affected area with sheep and cow fats. After this, the 𝗣𝗟𝗣𝗣𝗍 will then use tree bark strips from a pliable plant to tie the area and ensure that the bones remained in the same position of alignment while healing. These were also the same experts the 𝗣𝗟𝗣𝗣𝗍 went to with teeth problems. The last, and arguably the most important expert in the community, was traditional birth attendants who were always women. If a pregnant lady had constant abdominal pains, for instance, she usually went to her community's traditional birth attendant, who would massage her stomach and give her herbal medicines that were supposed to cure her problem. Traditional birth attendants also had the knowledge to tell whether the fetus was lying in its proper position and how old it was. Add to that their ability to assist women who couldn't deliver normally, as well as those who experienced problems discharging their placentas. The second tribe we'll look at is the 𝗣𝗟𝗣𝗍𝗍. During the pre-colonial and colonial periods, infectious epidemic diseases like measles, chickenpox, smallpox, and mumps wreaked havoc in Kikuyu land. And even though these diseases occurred periodically, they usually caused suffering across wide areas and among many families. So, how did the 𝗣𝗟𝗍𝗍 deal with these diseases? Well, once an epidemic broke out, the Gikuyu Council of Elders made up of members from the 9 clans would usually get together to determine the cause of these afflictions and how they were going to manage them. The meeting would also be attended by the tribe's diviner, seer, or specialist, so they could advise on the actual cause of the misfortune and how the community would be relieved. According to Liki, who was born and raised among the 𝗣𝗟𝗍𝗍𝗍, the tribe believed that smallpox and chickenpox were caused by evil spirits, and victims of the two were usually moved to a nearby bush inside a temporary shelter in the hope they would make full recoveries. In addition to isolating them right away, the 𝗣𝗟𝗍𝗍𝗍 also developed a unique and efficient method of vaccination where the pustules of recovering patients would be pricked using a thorn and the serum squeezed onto a leaf. After that, the serum was then rubbed onto the cuts of the skins of the newly infected. Better yet, the vaccinator would also make cuts into the skins of healthy people who wished to get vaccinated. This process would usually infect the healthy individuals with an extremely mild attack of smallpox from which they would not die. With that in mind, while coming up with this video, I did some research and learned that only in extremely rare situations will someone get smallpox twice, so the 𝗣𝗟𝗍𝗍𝗍 are certainly onto something using this trick. It's also essential to note that the community will use those who had recovered from the disease to play the role of vaccinators. Now, remember I noted that the community believed that the diseases were primarily caused by evil spirits, so those who had recovered had to undergo a process of purification before they were integrated back into society. Unlike chickenpox and smallpox, those suffering from measles were not kept in seclusion. That said, the community did understand that the disease was just as dangerous as the other two, so its appearance usually led to the employment of quick measures. Here's an example of a solution they used. A concoction from red ochre and dirt from a molehill mixed with sugarcane beer was usually applied to the rashes. Another solution was the rubbing of leaves of a plant the tribe called 𝗤𝗟𝗍𝗍 over the victim's whole body so the plant juice could penetrate the skin. Other infectious diseases that the pre-colonial Kikuyu grappled with were bilharzia, gonorrhea, and yaws. Collectively, these diseases were called mutiori by the Gikuyu community. What's more, yaws was a very feared disease and was only curable when diagnosed and managed immediately after an attack. The common treatment involved chopping and boiling small pieces of branches of the muteta tree. Hot water combined with the juices of the tree, then mixed with honey constituted herbal medicine that would cure the disease. Another treatment involved extracting fluid from a plant called mutukia and boiling it, after which the liquid will then be applied to all the open sores. In addition to the two medications, recovering Mutiori victims were also given herbal medications they would consume while waiting for a full recovery. Roots from several plants including banana and sorghum were collected and boiled together for a few minutes. Thereafter, the liquid will then get strained off and mixed with fresh cow's milk, then stored in a gourd for 3 days. After the 3 days had passed, the patient would then drink a hornful of the concoction 3 times a day and was expected to make a full recovery within a week or 2. The community's medicine man, called Mundumugu in the native tribe, also forbade these victims from sharing a bed or engaging in sexual intercourse. I feel like I should also point out that a Gikuyu medicine man was usually the most respected individual within the community. Another thing worth noting, the Gikuyu believed some diseases plaguing the community were human-induced, major culprits being witches, known as Arogi in the native tribe. And like in most Kenyan communities, witches and sorcerers were the most hated in the Gikuyu society, and once found, it would always end in their demise. The third community we'll look at in today's video is the Kamba community. This tribe had one of the most interesting medical setups, and after extensive research, I learned that herbal medicine practice in the community was a very pronounced and respected profession in Kambaland. That said, for one to become a recognized and respected herbalist in the Kamba community, they had to have extensive experience, usually ranging from 15 years all the way to 30 years. With that in mind, when a young one realized that they would like to take on that role in the future, they would usually have to live with the current community's traditional healer and act as the assistant until they had taken in all the information. You need to remember, back then, means of storing information that exists today were not around, so the extended period of time was required if the community wanted to be sure that all the medical information was going to get passed down to the next generation. In addition to that, another point I ought to mention is that the Kamba medical setup included 2 different types of experts. These were the herbalists and diviners. The main difference between the two is that herbalists inherited their skills through training and knowledge from previous medicine practitioners, while diviners, as the name suggests, were usually born with the ability to foresee, foretell, and discover hidden language. They usually did this by the aid of psychic powers. A great example of this is 𝗖𝗛𝗘𝗔𝗦𝗘, the Kamba prophetess. If you haven't heard about her, I encourage you to check out the video I created about her recently. I'll leave its link in the description below. And as you will learn in the video, diviners also encouraged to grow up alongside herbalists and attain that knowledge as well. Anyway, he is a great example that will help you better understand the difference between the roles of herbalists and diviners in the Kamba community. If a sick person visited a herbalist with a strange medical condition, and the herbalist deduced that he wouldn't be able to cure the illness because he didn't have enough information on the condition, then he would usually refer the patient to a diviner. The diviners will then carry out a ritual that put them in touch with their psychic abilities, after which they will be guided to a tree or substance that can be used to heal the strange condition. The guiding usually happened as a vision, but if the diviner got up and followed the exact route he or she had seen in the vision, they will usually find the substance in the exact position as they saw in that vision. Better yet, once the substance healed the individual's medical condition, the information would get forwarded to the herbalist, who would in turn ensure that he passed the knowledge to all his students as well. Now that you understand the traditional medical setup in the Kamba community, let's take a look at several strange solutions to serious illnesses that the tribe's herbalist used. To treat syphilis and gonorrhea, a herbalist gathered fresh leaves of the moluki tree, boiled them in water, and advised the patient to drink 1 glass 2 times a day for 14 days or until the patient recovered. Another medication used was the roots and stem barks of the modonga tree to heal typhoid. The roots and stem barks will usually be soaked in water overnight, and the sick patient was advised to drink the infusion 2 times a day until he or she recovered. Other times, this medication will be taken with soup, and in these instances, the meal will also be boiled with root barks from the mukawa tree and leaves from the muteta tree. To treat convulsions among children, the Kamba would administer roots of the kio tree to the afflicted young ones. Records also suggest that the tree will be used as a remedy against asthma in the community. For a detailed list of herbs the Kamba community used, I will leave a link to the source in the description below. There are hundreds of such trees, and listing them all in this video will only bore most of you. Anyway, that's it for today. I didn't want to make this video too long, lest I made it boring. But if you like the content and would like to learn about traditional medical setups in all other Kenyan communities, then kindly let me know in the comment section below and I'll create a part 2 of this video right away. Thank you and see you again next week. That's it for today. If you like the content, kindly do not forget to smash the like button below. This will help the channel grow and allow me to make more videos in the future. Also, if you have a topic you think I should cover, do not hesitate to leave a comment below. Thank you and see you again next week.